shout loud, bring the crowd, bring the roof down to the ground.
So good small group. I think we're going to keep this really interactive, and one of the things I'm going to do is actually do an interactive poll. So get your smart device out, your phone, and there'll be instructions on how to do that as we get to that point. But really what I wanted to share with you guys is, I know, we vary as far as kind of our marketing efforts from running our small business to medium, and then, some of us here in our community at the Hub, very large, multi-global corporations. So part of my role, and I'll talk a little bit about myself in a minute here, is driving kind of a competitive strategy for a large multi-global software company. And then I tried to think of how could this actually scale? How could we actually put some kind of thought leadership and guidance and best practices into looking at your, kind of maybe one person shop all the way up to your, 20,000 employee company, and build a strategy and think of, competitive marketing as a cornerstone of how you go to market and how you differentiate your products and services. So we'll talk a little bit about me, what my background is, why I'm actually can talk about this subject. We'll talk a little bit of some of the challenges we call in competitive marketing, right? A lot of times we're so focused on bringing a product to market and selling it. What are some of the things that, hey, when we think about our competition, we don't do this, and we have various challenges that prevent us from doing some things. Of course, what is competitive marketing, all the way, and then identifying who your audience is if you're to pull together a competitive program or even an outreach, building a strategy, and then kind of into the lessons learned and maybe a little career advice on my end that I've gleaned over the 20 plus years I've been in this business. So a few things maybe you should walk away with. Look for this in the session today. Really maybe how to think of your competition a little differently. Is it somewhat a local competitor? Is it another national corporation? Is it on all levels of your geo and market outreach? How can I use maybe my competitive positioning to my benefit? Marketing, building your marketing strategy with competition in mind, right? That's pretty simple. But as we kind of look at, building differentiation, that's a big thing, right? What really differentiates ourselves? How do we build differentiation and then push that down through your go-to-market? Maybe some ideas on how to do that differently, better, or if you haven't done it at all, just doing it. And then, some tips and tools that I've used and what you can employ and to bring into your current strategy. So those who don't know me, I'm Ben Scheerer. I have been in the software industry for a good part of my 20 plus years career, and for large kind of multi-global, multinational software companies since way back in 2000, I think. Got my first job with a big software company. Prior to that, I actually started here in Muskegon, so I'm a Western Michigan graduate, undergrad. Worked at the old Entree Computer, if you guys remember that, in Muskegon Heights back in the day. That was my first job out of college. Made $16,000 a year, so crushing it back then. But from there, found my interest, in technology. Decided I needed to go to maybe a bigger market and really embrace myself in kind of this business-to-business type capability and sales and marketing. And I moved to Denver, Colorado. Came back to Michigan once, moved back to Denver, and then recently came back here to Michigan about a year ago. During this time, I have built out a community and a conference called the Competitive Marketing Summit. So the whole idea here was to kind of build some best practices, build some a community that brought together some good ideas and building competitive into your marketing activities. And there's really nothing like this in the industry. That's why we built it, right? It's actually something that I needed in my own career. And there are a lot of kind of competitive organizations, competitive intelligence society, that type of thing, but nothing really specific to what I needed in high tech and more so just in the marketing aspect rather than the intelligence aspect. So first poll. If you guys can zero in on that QR code, that's the easiest way to do it, or you go to slido.com and then number 90944. So we'll use this one more time. So who encounters competitive pressures in their day-to-day business? For you, there's a lot of competition out there. You see some competition. Or no, you have no competition. You basically have a corner in the market, or you do something so unique that isn't even factor into your plans. All right, we're starting to see some people. All right.
This is really cool. I've never seen like interactive QR code.
Yeah, these things are great. Yeah, these are a lot of fun.
You do it through Zoom.
I've got to use the physical Zoom characteristics.
So did you guys get the QR code to work? Was that it? Were you able? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
He's always showing off.
We'll give Eric another minute here.
QR codes for menus, right? Pros. Now we don't use QR codes for menus for pros.
Yeah. So initial results kind of show me, yeah, you guys are dealing with competition, right? This is impacting your business in some form or another. Yeah, nobody here clearly has a business or endeavor that is, competition doesn't factor in. So good to know. Oh, there was Eric's, I think. Got you at the last minute. Yeah, there we go. Okay, lots of competition out there. We know what your vote was, Eric. So what is competitive marketing? So when I think of it as kind of an aspect of marketing, I look at it more kind of the acquisition and assimilation of competitive intelligence. So in the industry, we call the CI, right? Competitive intelligence can mean a lot of different things depending on what industry you're in. In fact, in software, CI was continuous integration. So I kind of, when I first heard the term, I'm like, well, it doesn't really make much sense. But now in the competitive world, it's competitive intelligence. So they're full-time careers, obviously, of people that collect, competitive market data and boil it up into dashboards and reports and that type of thing, and give it to, their salespeople or their business. But we take it one step further, right? We take this information and be able to distill this down to business functions that better differentiate and position our company products and or services. All right, so this is tying in the marketing to the competitive intelligence. All right, but by doing so, and especially kind of in larger, organizations that maybe have a different sales function, that maybe have different functions for development, manufacturing, maybe even geographically dispersed. We see this role fit into kind of a general maybe product marketing role or some type of marketer or maybe sales enablement. And it's always a function of the role, right? There's not a competitive marketing professional where that's your title. I haven't seen it yet. Hopefully maybe that will come in time. The biggest thing, and what we always hear is like, we don't have time. Competitive's kind of a side role, right? And I'll look at, our competitors once a quarter and maybe do some work, but then once that's behind me, I have to get back to my day job, right? So, finding time for everything competitive, and this can be a very time-consuming task. So, how do I scale that function? What kind of content do we produce that's meaningful back to the business with the data we collect? why is this important? Why is competitive important? And this might be what the business is asking you. They might not know. Staying current, how do you efficiently keep your competitive materials up to date, right? And I got the great picture of the sales guy. Hey, I could have, oftentimes I would have published a report maybe a week ago, and I get a sales guy who's like, yeah, get something a little more current than this. It's like, really? This is something that is always evolving, and people who consume competitive data to obviously excel your business want the most current relevant information, right? So it is important. And what do where do you prioritize? How do you know what's important? That's very important, right? You need the feedback, you need to be able to improve your systems and your approaches. And then finally, accurately identifying your competitive landscape, right? Who is your competitor and why? And how do you prioritize them? And I'll talk a little bit about that. So the bottom line is competitive marketing is critical. It helps you define your messaging and positioning, right? So when you look at your go-to-market and how you position your business to your competition, are you basically saying the same things they are, or are you truly differentiating? And this is, anyone know what these, well, this is kind of that's a hard question to ask, but this is what in science is the litmus test, right? So, can anyone say what you are saying? So if you say we are the best software product in the market to do this, to run the cloud, how many other companies can say that? Well, a lot of them. And then you start to build what your differentiation is according to, obviously, what your competitors can and can't do. So this really helps you. And what you want to get down to is like literally the absolutes. We are the only company that can do this. We are the only company that can do that, and then obviously build in the business value. So those are the things you try to influence. And then you want to help guide the business, right? Having a seat, maybe not at the executive table, but at least influencing or giving your managers the data and the information they need to guide the decision. And this can go all the way up to mergers and acquisitions, possible partnerships, whatever the business, maybe different feature functionality within the product. And we'll talk a little bit about that too. And then of course, enabling sales and go-to-market. And this is a big part of what I play in my day-to-day role. So we enable the sales force to sell competitively. And so I say training. And yes, your salespeople may be good at what they do, but you still have to train them. You still have to train them how to sell competitively. Because most of them, you can see by simple questions that they ask, like, I want the silver bullets, or I want, what's the absolute, what do we do that the competition doesn't? And you got to make it easy for them. You got to make it, easy to communicate, and then easy to position and impactful. And we do, we build collateral, and we also have a lot of, kind of customer face time too. So a lot of interactions with the customer. All right. So who benefits from competitive marketing? You do as a marketer. All right. First and foremost, it helps you build simple, and I try to kind of scale this into the one-man shop, right? To look at, what do you do as a marketer? You advertise on Google, you build a website, you build collateral, you do some local advertisements, you do product demonstrations and collateral and any type of kind of customer-facing or market-facing content. So what helps you narrow down how you differentiate from your customer? Competitive marketing helps in that, right? Help you even think about your customer in different kind of personas or buying centers, right? Who buys your product? How do they buy it? What do they look at for your product or service as compared to what they look at for your competitor? And then of course, differentiated messaging. And I say what alienates your competition, right? They simply cannot, that's the silver bullet. They simply cannot say what you're saying. Then we look at actually building products and services. Oops, I gave away. So, this is where I play a big role in just kind of helping build value to what I provide. into actual building products, right? So you have product managers, you have designers, you have research and development, you have manufacturing managers, whomever, actually creates the product or service. You might even have vendors that, suppliers that supply whatever you're selling. This allows you to give feedbacks like, hey, we have seen, these features have lost deals. For the fact that we do not have this feature, we have lost deals, right? And to say that in a monetary, we lost $1 million worth of opportunity because we did not have this feature. Or, this feature actually worked well. Let's put more emphasis into that because our competitors are already a year behind, and we've already established ourselves as a leader with this particular capability. And then, of course, again, as you extend your product, help to identify other maybe products or services that can complement what you do, and again, further differentiate. And that might be for, obviously, maybe mergers, acquisitions, or even just partnering opportunities. And then finally, kind of your business leader, right? Your sales staff. Like I mentioned earlier, this is a big part. Selling your product. How do they differentiate? How do they quickly have that conversation? Building objection response. Being able to quickly kind of neutralize the competition and then focus on business value. All right, Sun Tzu. Anyone know who this guy is? Yeah. So if you're in any type of business school, that's probably your first book that your teacher, professor, or whatever had you read. It's like a art of war strategy book on how to beat your competition or your enemy. And I love this quote because this is competitive marketing, right? The greatest victory is one that requires no battle. So preparing for the competition on the front, having all this stuff in place, puts you into the advantage. Right? So I'm going to go through a couple steps. We just talked about them a little earlier of what is needed to build competitive marketing, what's missing, what's the challenges. So the first thing we'll do is we're going to build a competitive landscape. And this might be an exercise you do once, twice, maybe look at it over and over again. But what you want to do is you want to look at and rank your competitors kind of in 3 categories, at least the way I do it, right? This isn't set in stone. But building kind of a highly competitive category. These are the 3 to 5 maybe competitors that you run into all the time. Right? You definitely are head-to-head with these guys, so you pay much more attention. I even said, I put a number on that, right? 80% of your effort belongs here. And you want to engage your greatest effort, so it's kind of the 20% of your competitors require 80% of your attention. So at least you want to build your whole strategy around these competitors, your go-to-market, everything. These guys would take precedent. But you want to also bear in mind that you do have kind of competition that are somewhat competitive, and I said about 10 to 15% of your time there. These might be maybe perceived competitors, right? There's some overlap in messaging. Customers like, well, doesn't that company do what you guys do? And it's like, no, we do this, right? So it gives you an opportunity to kind of like refine your message. Like, okay, let's just get these guys out of the picture. Let's kind of think of how our messaging, would not kind of mistake our product for that claim, or they just do a piece, right? They don't provide the full solution. They just maybe do a piece of that that could potentially cause your sales organization some time and effort around understanding that competitor. And then the watch list competitors, right? You got some new entrants into the game. Maybe they're far behind, but they could potentially pose a risk to your business down the road. You just want to keep your eye on that. Make sure you're kind of got your bases covered from that point of view. And also, when we kind of define our competitive landscape, probably with our top competitors, 3 to 5, we start to break it down. Right? Let's go in and build kind of a SWOT analysis. First thing I would do. Right? What's our strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats? You should know that about your own business. But what is that of the competitors? Right? And where is their overlap? Where is their, where can we build more kind of opportunities and strengths, how can we neutralize kind of the weaknesses and threats on our side, and then exploit those on their side. Any questions so far? This is one that I have done. I just kind of call it like it's one of the software categories I manage is management and automation software. And I kind of looked at where our product ranks with other kind of leaders or competitors in our space, right? So I identified, I don't know, half dozen or so, 10 different competitors that have a play in this particular market, right, in this management and automation. So I actually broke it down into different markets. But so the size of the bubble is revenue by that company. The further right, in the upper right-hand corner is the best position to be, right? So how can I, as Red Hat, move up to this position right here and take out this competitor? What are some things we can do? And then, building that competitive landscape, that SWOT analysis will help me kind of feed that into, our go-to-market and work with even our demand gen and sales teams to help build a better strategy around that. So step 2 is now just keep an eye on the market, what's going on competitively, and I call it, just acquire and assimilate competitive data, all right? So one thing is just monitoring what's going on in your competitors. A lot of easy ways to do that, and I'll show you some tools in a minute here, but obviously the web's the easiest. You can simply build alerts and get information based on keywords. You can do social listening, which is something I'm starting to dive a little deeper into for competitive, right? If there's a trend in the social media world, like, I'll look at Twitter and LinkedIn is probably the two that I'll look at the most. And if you see kind of these trends around a certain keyword, what caused this? What event triggered that trend? So it's kind of cool, right? And you can, that helps you feed in. It's like, so our competitor ran a campaign, or they did some type of conference or market, or maybe they had a press release or something. You would want to know that, all right? Because you'd want to kind of build, you would want to respond to it if you choose to, in some form, fashion, at least internally, if not internally, build a campaign, a rapid response campaign externally. So there's a lot of different ways you could go with that. Look at win-loss data. Super important. And anyone actually, like in your businesses, interview customers that didn't buy your product. I mean, think if you had a third party doing that. Think if you didn't do that, you just hired someone, or you had a third party interviewer that said, hey, we understand you looked at the solution. I'm an analyst. Do you mind sharing me your decision criteria? And the information you find is staggering, right? You can just get some really good insights. Primary and secondary intelligence, basically you go out, it's like, how does this company, hire a company to go out and figure out, how this company goes to market, why are they unique, a competitor, what can your company do to kind of offset that momentum or even embrace some of what they've done successfully. Industry analysts, we use that a lot in our industry, right? Being able to talk to the analysts that customers are talking to make big money decisions, right? So you want to influence the analysts, but also you want to understand, what the competition is doing, and they're very forthcoming. They'll give you that information. And then the most easiest, right, or logical, it's not always easy, it's a product teardown, right? Get the competitive product and break it down, understand how it ticks, right, and how it compares. Uh-oh. Did I lose it? Oh, okay, here we go. Leverage intelligence tools. Obviously, Google Alerts. So if you guys have never done that, just Google Alerts, and you can set up just keywords that will, and RSS feeds that will give you a daily summary of what's going on. I mean, literally, for a multi-billion-dollar company, I use these simple tools to keep an eye on the market, right? Owler is one that's more tech specific, but these kind of different services exist. Owler and Crunchbase. These are kind of like free to use. If you want premium features, you got to pay for them. But the free is good enough in many cases, right? So you can set up competitors, and they'll send you again kind of daily, weekly summaries of what's going on, capture different aspects of what's going on in the industry, not just Google feeds, and then a cross section of all those. Also, you can buy premium. You can actually get tools that are designed to do competitive intelligence gathering, and they can get pretty pricey depending on the size of your company, at anywhere from $2,000 a year for a single user license all the way up to $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 depending on the size of your organization. So we use a product called Clue. I've used Crayon. We've looked at Wide Narrow, and I've looked at Compite as well. But that's just a sampling of what is available on the market. And then finally, you want to now take this, and this is where the real competitive marketing piece comes in. You want to start to analyze and start to build some conclusions and give guidance back to the business, whether it's your own business and give yourself guidance, or help enable your managers to understand, what the news is, what is happening, a culmination, not just stuff you can get right off the web, but real accurate, good insights as to how this is impacting your business. And you can look at things like, why does it matter? So when a news article comes out and you have to share it with someone, add your commentary. This matters because we see a trend going this way, and based on my research, it's could be impact our business here. And I have a sample report of just kind of, which I thought is cool, and you can't really see it real well, but like kind of the announcements, the market response, and then kind of varying degrees of severity, right? What you should pay attention to first. Yeah, read this stuff if you have time, kind of thing. And then don't be afraid to try different approaches, right? People start to attach to things that they like. And if you feel like you got something hot and people give you good feedback, then continue on with that. Establish a cadence though too. Make sure you do this once a month, once a quarter. If you're just doing it for yourself, great. If you're sharing it with other people in your organization, obviously that will provide value, and then they start to look to you as a resource of value. Build a content strategy. This, again, is more for if you're working in a larger corporation, but it could help, as you enable people that sell your products or even represent your products in some way or services. And we do all sorts of stuff, right? And this is all aligned too with the few slides earlier, which talks about your how much time you should spend on each competitor. So obviously you don't build out a content strategy on all your competitors. That's why I say, there's like kind of tactical down to strategic. So, a lesser known competitor, we might do something simple and tactical, like we call the competitive iceberg, which is just, we look at two products, we look at like how we're positioned and how they're positioned, and some simple differentiations. An exercise that shouldn't take more than 1 or 2 hours to pull together. All right, and then you throw it out there and you see how long it lives. Down to building battle cards. So here's something a salesperson can really look at. The difference between two products, two companies, like no more than a 2-3 pager at most. Another communication is a competitive flash. This is kind of a point in time communication. Like if a company announces a new product, or market movement, acquisition, or something happened with a competitor, you write a communication that is, what happened, why is this important, how should we respond, and then give your field guidance on how to deal with this news with their customers, right? So basically just, this is what happened, and this is how you're supposed to continue selling around it. To competitive snapshots, which may be a little more in depth on a newer technology or something, and then goes, not super deep, but deep enough that you've done kind of a good comparison of what the competitive product service is, and you have a decent understanding. down to a playbook and a dashboard. So a playbook is a several week-long process. You're looking at every aspect of the company from strategic, looking at their financial reports if they're a public company, down to maybe even getting financials on them through employing a firm to do some intelligence gathering for you, all the way down to a background of their leadership and how they typically do business and what their strategy is, and then how to position against them. Typically for larger kind of competitors, several products, very complex type deals. And then a competitive dashboard, something that's a real-time resource for you and your people that you serve to get up-to-date information. And that's something that's kind of curated on a daily basis by a competitive marketing person. I'll show you a little bit about that. So sales content, make sure it's very transactional, must be accessible. That's huge, right? Sales needs to know where to find it. Oops. And they always want the silver bullets, right? What do we have that the competition doesn't, that we can seal the deal? And you get as close as you can to that, but sometimes very difficult to do. And I talked a little bit about what we do in these different reporting structures, but you want to tease things out like objection response. Our product does this, and no what other product does that. Well, how do you respond to that and help sales respond? Also, help them uncover landmines. What potentially could a competitor say against us that we could turn it around, right? And even you could be proactive. It's like, well, some of our competitors say we don't do this, but in reality. And then you always want to keep your sales, you always want to keep your go-to-market informed and what I call battle ready, right, before the battle happens. Again, I talked a little bit about product. So you want to certainly provide, and in my experience, we've done a lot of kind of software teardowns. So this is the opportunity, regardless of what the product is, kind of taking it apart. Even if it's a service, what is it? What are the mechanics of this? How is it managed? I mean, these are all good competitive nuggets to then be able to position within the product roadmaps and design, and then also influence the better product positioning based on that as well. And of course, management, we want the managers to get a higher level picture, probably the top, 3 to 5 competitors and maybe 3 kind of major things that happened in the last quarter that maybe they didn't know but should know, and maybe some analysis to back it up. And then we talked a little bit, I think this is probably the most important part I play, is go-to-market, right? So I love doing messaging, right? Really understanding how you talk about the product, using all the buzzwords, but not too many, and use the new ones and not the overused ones, and make sure you're current and speak, and then you message test that, and go out and, whatever that route might be to market. Also looking at defining a pricing strategy. So this is a pretty big deal, right? Make sure you're within range of what other companies price, discount levels. So there's manufacturer retail pricing, but there's average street pricing. What really makes the difference? How is that discounting? Actually, how does that go down in the field? Is it automatic discounts, or does it have to go through some rigorous approval process? That all makes the ease of sales, helps you build your go-to-market and define your ease of sales a little more. And then go in and build kind of discover and exploit new opportunities, as well as build your market requirements, right? What's your next generation product going to look like? How you're going to go to market? What's the competitive piece? So that might even be something you contribute to rather than drive as a competitive marketer. I talked a little bit about why we win, why we lose. We use win-loss analysis a lot, and this isn't just unique to our industry. This is across manufacturing, retail, services, and software. But this really gives you, an an idea of like, you thought maybe your competitor was so-and-so, but the reality is they aren't, right? And it might flush out some new competitors that you hadn't thought of before, and maybe the customer hadn't revealed to the sales rep at the time. They weren't able to understand the nature of the competition, which isn't unrealistic, right? Salespeople don't, they get very focused and don't ask the simple questions like, who are we competing against? And then, of course, feature gap and building out what is the product requirement definition, or the PRD. And I'm not going to go into too much depth on this, but this is kind of, when you build out your competitor, you don't want, or your competitive profile for product strategy, you don't want to get caught in your competitor's perceived advantages, right? You don't want to build features and functions into your product that literally just gain parity and that don't have impact. You want to look at what's that next step. How can we leapfrog that perceived customer advantage, right? And all this stuff can help you do that. All right, next question. How are you currently using competitive marketing in your role right now? So you're constantly looking at your competitors. You could do more. Competitive differentiation plays a big role in your marketing activities. Competitive plays no role in my business. All right, I've convinced some people. You could do more. I'll take that as convincing people, right? All right, 2 seconds, lock in here. 1 and 2. All right, we'll stick with those. And you can still answer, I can still go back and get the answers to this we can share out with the group. Oh, there we go, awesome. Excellent. All right. Now I kind of described the process. I described, kind of what I go through in a day-to-day. Hopefully I was able to scale this, right? Because in my career I haven't dealt, well, other than working at Entree Computer, small business I've scaled up to very large business, but a lot of these concepts I think can play across anyone's organization as you think about the competition. So what have I learned? So there's a lot that you can make a full-time job at being a competitive marketing person in a big, medium to big size business. One thing I learned is there's lots of opportunities to automate, right? There's tools out there, there's ways you can take your information, collectively build process around them. So once you kind of establish, you do those first steps, right? You do the SWOT analysis, you define who your competitors are, you build the templates, then all you do is just start collecting and assimilating and really being an analyst to your business at this point, right? So you can focus on providing value and the output and even the self-service, right? For even your salespeople can use tools that maybe can be more self-service and automated, and that's what we strive for. There's obviously a lot of manual effort still there, but you can focus on the kind of the efforts that or the job functions that bring the most value back. When you do projects, so I talked like win-loss and some other type of competitive gathering projects, understand really what you want the outcome, or what do you expect the outcome to be and what you plan to do with it, right? So a lot of those tools and services will only take you so far. And it's like, well, I want to do pricing research for my product against this product, different geographies or different verticals. From there, you'll probably get good information. There's a lot of good primary intelligent companies out there that'll get you whatever you want. But at the same time, you want to then decide, it's like, how am I going to take that information, translate it into something that's actually going to help my business be better. And then these are kind of, when I talk about lessons learned, it's also a little bit of career advice, right? So one thing we always want to do in our companies is show value back, right? So make sure you're aligned with where you're, not necessarily where your company's making its most money, but that next kind of vector, the next innovation engine vector into, where you're going to make money, 2, 3, 5 years from now. And of course, you can imagine in high tech, that's a big focus, right? We're always reinventing. Develop the content that matters to your personas. We talked a little bit about personas. How do you know? How do you know that makes a difference, right? Well, you can track competitive wins. You can do surveys, internal surveys. You can just simply go out and ask, is this good stuff? You can, if you have a sales portal or any type of rating system where you post collateral, you can ask people to give feedback, that type of thing. Sales is a little tricky though, because sales never loses. It's always someone else's fault, right? So you want to make sure you get to the truth of the matter and really understands, like, well, maybe it wasn't, it's always too expensive. Your product's always too expensive, right? And or the competition has better features. We didn't have those features. And maybe in reality, the value wasn't presented or something, the service wasn't good or something like that, like a salesperson's not going to tell you. And then measure yourselves with others in the industry. So this is something I struggled with, but this was kind of the pitch for my community I built, Competitive Marketing Summit. Go and talk to your people, your like-minded people, and understand what they're doing differently. Little career advice that I've learned along the way, position yourself an expert in your competitive domain. You are the analyst for your company. You understand the competition better than anyone, and your job is to focus on this, right? You'd think your business leaders would understand. They do understand the competition, but it's to be a resource or someone for them to bounce ideas off of provides a great value. Communicate within the organization with your customers, vendors, your partners, whatever. Constantly tell them why you're better, why, what advances you've made, how, you've done better than the competition. Don't be afraid to say, advertise yourself as someone who does not, we are better than our competition. Stay transparent and ethical. That's important. Don't dumpster dive or do something that's shady or illegal, or misrepresent yourself is the big thing we see a lot in our industry. And then training and certifications help your career, right? So there are certifications for competitive academy for competitive intelligence is one of them, and there's a few other like product marketing ones. What used to be called pragmatic marketing is one that I've taken, which covers, it's more product and product marketing and product management, but has a lot of competitive elements in it as well. All right, so one thing that I have done, and we're getting right next to the top of the hour here, is like I mentioned earlier, I built out this Competitive Marketing Summit community and conference, and this was something that a friend of mine and I came to the idea or the conclusion that we needed something to help our careers, because I didn't really know how to benchmark my progress and understand what other people are doing in the space that was specific to high tech. So it was a really cool opportunity. I was living out in Denver at the time when I started this, and worked for a Silicon Valley based company. So we could really tap into that kind of community, which we did. So we kind of got both coasts. We held the conference in Denver, so it was kind of halfway in between the East Coast and the West Coast. And got some very highly kind of focused professionals on board that found value in something like this, right? This was very key to their role. So it wasn't, I wasn't hosting thousands of people. We were near about 150, I think, in our last conference. But we did things like breakout workshops and then 2 days of kind of competitive marketing and marketing related tracks, right? But with the kind of the competitive theme. kind of the who's who in high tech attended our conferences. We did see people, there were people outside of the high tech. We saw some utilities, and we saw some marketing software programs, NetSuite and OSI, and but primarily Ericsson was one that's a little outside of what we do. But yeah, primarily that's the community I could tap into, so that's what I took advantage of. And then we did have good sponsors. So those tools I showed you earlier, these were the sponsors. So they all play kind of a role in intelligence gathering, to reporting on intelligence, CI gathering. Also some automation tools in here, and then some, had an artist actually do a graphic recording of the conference right there. There he is. Happens to be my cousin. So I got him at a good price. Yeah, so it's very interactive, very good, and that's what we miss, right, nowadays with the COVID. We don't, so I didn't get to do it this year, but we're looking to revive it for next year, for 2021. All right, last question. What do you anticipate doing different after this presentation? Take a closer look at your competition, use it to your advantage. Interject more competitive messaging into your marketing activities. Build a strategy to better understand my competition on a more real-time basis. Explore more competitive tools, and you can pick more than one here too, if it doesn't say that. Seek more guidance and information. Make a career out of competitive marketing. All right, so my message stuck. Everyone wants to put more competitive into their current activities, marketing activities. Good to hear. All right, well, good.
I have a question.
Yes, question.
Do you ever find when you're doing your intelligence on your competition that they have a huge part of this market? I'm learning that we could maybe take that on. I mean, you're not differentiating yourself from that guy, but you're seeing that there's maybe a market available.
Right, and that.
Use your data that way, or?
Yeah, because so the question is, can I look at a competitor that maybe is larger and has a bigger part of a market that potentially you could take advantage of? Yeah, absolutely. So that goes back to the first part of the presentation, when you understand your competitive landscape. So maybe they're not a direct competitor, but when you start to build out like that bubble slide I had, it's like, wow, this competitor is big in this market space, and they're way up in the upper right of my graph, right? So there's something there that maybe I should research and understand. And you might know, it's like, oh, maybe they tap into the Asian market or something where you have no presence. But that, maybe you don't know that. So yeah, that's absolutely something we do on a daily basis to understand where the revenue sources are, and that can, if it's a public company, it's easy, right? You can read their 10-Qs and get, public financials down to a certain point, whatever they choose to report. And then, one of them, and a good example in high tech is Amazon, right? Everyone thought they were a retailer of stuff over the web. Well, people started to pay attention when they built this 200% growth year-over-year business and their bookings in the billions, right? They're a $10 billion organization just on cloud computing, right? And so Microsoft took a notice of that, hang on a second. If people's compute workloads are going to Amazon, that means they're not going to need as much Microsoft. So we better get on this. And IBM took advantage, and Google, of course, paid attention to this. So here's this. Yeah, right, yes, yeah, exactly. They look at the iPhone, and I saw something just recently, a report, I don't know how many years ago, but not too long ago, like within 10 years or something, right before the first iPhone was announced. It's like, it was an article how could anyone beat Nokia at their game in the mobile device? And it's like, then the next day iPhone 1 was announced, right? And the story speaks for itself. So there's definitely the opportunity to disrupt. I think that's the idea there. What can you do differently, and how can you take a piece of that? Rick?
It's different now than this little teeny. I'm down low.
Right.
Guy.
Well, in your next career, you can.
Good. But, when I worked in a large public company, it shocked me that many times I was the only one reading the quarterly earnings calls, transcripts from our competitors. And I walk into the meeting, and I was the only one running through the 10Qs. I'm sure somebody somewhere was, but it was never getting down.
Don't even think of it.
To the tactical people that I was, part of. And so I think it's taken for granted, I think a lot of times, that everybody must know this stuff.
Yeah.
And most people don't do the homework.
Yeah.
They're all a competitor. If you don't do the homework, if you do the homework, you can walk in and you can look really smart. You're not really smart.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
10Q, the transcript or whatever.
Yeah.
I like to listen to the transcripts because they all run them through some, computer baloney. And they're all wrong. Same, but you take them out anyway.
Yeah.
When you listen, you hear a lot of personality.
Yeah.
It takes you freaking forever.
Yeah, it's time consuming, but again, that's your opportunity to make your boss or boss's boss look smarter, right? Hey, I just read through the 10Q, these are some things. And those are so revealing. You wouldn't believe the strategic information in a public report, earnings report. Like they'll say, well, we're putting all our bets in cloud computing, right? It's like, whoa, this is, do we know that? So, those are some good insights, and that's something you can build alert on and do just automated reporting. It's like one does, Microsoft announced their quarterly earnings and what's the end of their fiscal year. That also tells your sales rep when Microsoft's going to discount or a competitor's going to discount. If they're a public company, the end of their fiscal year, right? That's bargain season, right? So customers know that too.
Someone runs through the financials, they can spit out and then start to go, oh, look what's happening to their inventory level. Look what's happening to their down their debt or whatever it is. You can really come up with some interesting stuff.
Yep, good point. Yeah. There's so many different facets you can go down. That's why I only focus on competitive marketing. That's all strategic, competitive strategic positioning and research and stuff that obviously I consume, but we had a 4-person team in my last company. That's all they did, right? And it's do 6-week-long research projects and just one competitor. So, all right, if you need to get a hold of me, I have an email address up there. I'm also on Twitter and LinkedIn, all that. So,
Can you get a copy of this?
Sure. Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.